Welcome back to Off the Cuff, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about time. In this episode, it's critical time. Very often we take it for granted. Don't realize how time is precious and absolutely valuable in your personal and professional life. I oftentimes don't really look at time as a key indicator for me or something that I use very often. I just kind of go about my day in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And over time and in my experience, I realized time was so valuable, right? When we think about values, our family, what our trigger are for our values. So for me, it's family, one of them. And if you spend that time with them and you find time to spend with them or create time to spend with them, it's that much better. And that's the same thing professionally, right? That we don't really do very often.
Mm-hmm.
So I will come up with the first personal story about, for me, what has been kind of an eye opener about time. When I tried to create more of a dating cycle with my wife, Alicia and me would, just kind of shoot off the hip. We would try to find an excuse, where we can get together. We would ask our parents or my parents to watch the boys, and we would just do it on a random day. It wasn't specific. It wasn't a valuable choice. It was just that was the day that we were going to choose.
Mm-hmm.
Then I kind of realized that we weren't really planning around that time. We weren't doing anything but just simply saying, okay, today is the day that we're going to be together. And that's it. And it wasn't until I started putting a blocker in my calendar and specified an exact day every week that was necessary for us to spend together. Not only that, but then also created a program with my parents, basically saying every Friday, you're going to watch the boys, so that way me and Alicia have a date night. And when the time comes for that date night, so now I have Thursday or Wednesday to plan for that day because I now know that that day is going to be our date night.
Mm-hmm.
And from the moment that I made that transition, which was, I would say about 6 months ago, we started doing that. It has been probably the best change that we've made for us. It's helped us grow as a relationship and as partners. Not only because we are now focused on actual activities together that day, but we're now maximizing our time with each other. We're not simply saying, okay, today we're supposed to be doing something. What should we do now?
Mm-hmm.
No, it's already planned. It's already in place. There's no question what we're going to do. It's more so about enjoying what we're doing. And so I really found that that's been a great thing for me with time management, right? What about you?
Yeah, I think as far as the you mentioned obviously the time block and personal story, for me, like both professionally and personally, but work related, it always drives me crazy when people say that I don't have time.
Mm-hmm.
We all have 24 hours in the day, and we all have that one example of someone that gets a lot more done during the day than we ever will in a week, and yet they have a lot more obligations their time. They've got kids, they've got families, they've got they're running a Fortune 500 company. They do a lot of things in the day, and the reason they do it is because obviously they block out time, they create it. And honestly, when people say that I don't have time, it's really you don't have priorities. Because you can make time. And one of the things that I did before, like I did in the past, and it's really kind of helped me out, is find out where I'm spending my time. Because a lot of times we get in the day-to-day, and even me, we'll sit down and heaven forbid we even look at Facebook and Instagram, because I know that now they've got the smart smartphones. They get the apps that show you the times, and It's depressing half the time when you look at it.
Absolutely.
But you look at those things like that, screen time. So how often are you watching TV? Turning on the news, watching Netflix. And I'm not saying don't do these things, because it's sometimes we need to unwind. We have the date nights with our significant other. So I'm not saying don't do those things, but if you really kind of audit your time, you'll find you have a lot more time than you actually think.
Mm-hmm.
You can wake up in the morning, and my biggest thing is when not just for work, but like things that mean something to us. Like for me, is education. It's growing. I create time to read. I have to read. If I miss a day, I may miss a meal, but I'll never miss a day of reading.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I think, and so I create time for that. Create time to go to the gym. Create time with for date nights, things like that. So, really kind of find out what are where we spending the time. For me, it was always TV and Facebook. When I got rid of that stuff, I found out a lot more time on my hands.
Mm-hmm.
I took my reading. Now they have the Audible version.
Right.
So now instead of driving, I have a book playing. So constantly feeding my mind with those things. But
You're
really
still driving though.
Yeah, still driving. Yeah, but that's the thing. It's creating time for that, blocking out time, because this is the probably for salespeople anyway. This is a good analogy of the way of looking at it. If you have an appointment with one of your top prospects, it's 10 o'clock on Monday, and a colleague comes by, it's 9:50, and they say, hey Gio, we're gonna go to the coffee shop. Why don't you come with us? Do you go?
No.
Because you have an appointment, right?
Right.
That's the same thing. When you block out time, nothing distracts you. That's your time.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's an hour, 2 hours, 30 minutes, 15 minutes, it doesn't matter. That's your time.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you can do that, the better off you'll be. But
no, absolutely. Professionally for me, I mean, there's been a lot of time management examples that I could give, easily. But over the course of my career, I've always noticed that time management was difficult because I was always that go-getter, or I still am, but up and coming, I always wanted to prove myself and always was just that go-getter. And because I had that mentality, time wasn't really a factor in my process. It was more about immediate needs, immediate results.
Sure. And
never really paying attention to properly managing that time that I was trying to get to those results, and realizing that if I managed them properly, I would probably achieve my results either much quicker or better.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I started to really pay attention to that during my career, I said to myself, what is the one piece that I'm missing here, that I'm not getting where I want to be sooner or faster, or however you want to consider it? And it wasn't until I paid attention to time management. When I sat down and realized that, we all use a calendar format, or like we were talking before, a checklist, right? Mm-hmm. Which can be a form of time management. It's, you're putting blockers, and you're putting, set time frames of doing certain tasks, or having calls with your customer if that's the case, right? And I wasn't doing that. Aside from just setting up a call, I wasn't putting tasks or blocking my time away to make sure that I was taking care of those tasks. Mm-hmm. And instead, I was just simply just doing it as I went along, which was basically multitasking. I was just doing the necessary requirements for that task at hand, and if I couldn't finish it because something else came on my plate, I'd move on to the next one, leaving that one behind. And what happened there is that I was only giving myself 50 or less percent of that time during that task that I initially started, and when I shifted to the new one, I'm thinking of the past one.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also now considering the new one, right? So I'm not giving either one my full attention or that 100% that it deserves. And for that reason, I'm half-fasting my work and ultimately not delivering the results that the customer expects.
Mm-hmm.
Now roll in time management. Now actually pay attention to what you're doing and spending that allotted time that's required and devoted to that task. At that moment is when things started to shift and change. I then realized that my goals were being achieved much better.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at that point that I realized how important time management was. And till this day, I don't move forward, on my Monday of start of a week without ensuring that the day before on a Sunday, or even sometimes on that week prior on that Friday, I'm scheduling or looking at my calendar and ensuring that I have all of the block times in place and all of my needed tasks ready to go, so that I can make sure that I have a productive week. Because where I'm really honing in my efforts today is being proactive rather than reactive.
Sure.
Because a lot of times, I think as salespeople, we are so infatuated with the service that we're delivering to the customer that we ultimately build ourselves in this reactive mode, that we don't really pay attention to the value of what proactive means. And being proactive actually builds your pipeline. Being proactively creates new customers. Mm-hmm. Being proactive grows the customer that you're building that relationship with. Sure. And so those are all things that tie back to time management, right? Mm-hmm. So that is something that really I felt was valuable during the the transition and growth during career, right? So and that goes into some of the key things that we find or feel that's highlighted during our process. Mm-hmm. Again, not multitasking, but single tasking. You hear multitasking all the time. If anything, they're trying to teach you how to multitask better. But why? Why do you have to multitask? Why can't you single task? Why can't you learn to focus on one thing and then move on to the next, right? Multitasking is necessary because it's something that is needed at the time. If you're a person that works in a customer service environment and you're working on a task and somebody comes to you and says, hey, can you do this for me very quickly? Oftentimes, if your boss comes to you, let's just say, you have to jump off of what you're currently doing because they immediately need it. And that's understood. But if that's the case, take care of that and you move back to your task and you take care of the task you were originally working on, right? And that's still your single tasking, but with a caveat.
Well, here's the thing that I'll say to that. If you can block out your time, if you have your calendar full, if you have everything full and ready to go, and this is the biggest thing that we kind of run into. Mm-hmm. If you can have it all full, and say your boss does come in and say, "Hey, I need this," because here's a lot of times we want to put out fires. We want to kind of delegate things that we don't necessarily want to do. Mm-hmm. And it's basically everything that comes in, especially our emails, it's other people's problems.
Yeah.
They want to put it on you. So the way to do that is to fill your calendar up with everything you need to do. And where it's so full and you've got everything under control, you've got everything listed out, then you say, when your boss does come in, yes, I'm going to get that, just hold on one second. Let me pull out my calendar. And they see everything that's going on throughout your day. Let me see if I can pick a spot out where I can actually focus in on that, because that's important to you, so it's important to me. So let me try to figure out a place I can put that in. 9 times out of 10, your boss will say, you know what? I'm going to get Susie to do it. Mm-hmm. I'm going to get John to do it, because I know that they do the multitasking. They do kind of back and forth. Because here's the thing, like you mentioned before, our minds are adapt to switch on and off mm-hmm. between tasks. But that's the thing. We switch on and off. So we shut off one to go to the next, but we find ourselves, we have an open loop. Our minds want completion. They want to finish. So while we're focused on this task, we're focused on the previous task too. And like you mentioned, like our attention span is not necessarily on that task.
Yep. And you touched on that, that's part of blocking that time, right?
Yep.
That's also we talked on the multitasking. And just to, elaborate a little bit more on the third one is the auditing your time. And that really fits on a personal, I think, more than professional. I mean, it's absolutely professional, but if I think of it personally, audit your time. Take the time to really determine where you're spending that time. What does time mean to you, right? What is the value of time for you? And for, if I'm to, relate to that and put it in perspective for me, time is a 50-50 when it comes to personal and professional. Everyone's different, but I want to give that same amount of time that I give to my work that I do to my family, and I also want to ensure that I don't bring the work to my family and vice versa, right? And so what I mean by that is that if I audit my time and I ensure that I am allotting the necessary times for each group or for each professional and personally, then I ensure that I don't bleed one over to the other. Mm-hmm. And I ensure that I am devoting my 100% of myself to each one of them.
Sure.
And so it's crucial. And when you audit your time, you realize actually how much waste you have in between your calendar, right? Like you said, and I'll stop my part because this is important. You look at social media, you have more than enough time to spend in front of a TV. But is there anything relevant with what you're getting from those tasks? Are you attaining or growing from any of that? Highly unlikely. Mm-hmm. But if you were to sit in front of a book and your mind is a sponge, right? And retain information that you've never seen or had before, that's growth.
Yeah.
If you spent a little bit more time with your child or your significant other that you hadn't before, will your relationship or bond be stronger? Probably so. So find that time, right? And create that time, like we said before. That's me. So.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like you mentioned, with not having one professional and personal, not having one and bleed over into the other. Something that I've heard before. It's called Horseman's corollary, and what it says is time, or the time needed to complete a task contracts to the time that's given. So in other words, if you have a set amount of tasks, if you set, let's just say 2 hours to complete it, you'll get it knocked out in 2 hours. And it's another way of looking at it. We all kind of have been through the scenario that we get more done the day before we go on vacation than we get done in a week. Mm-hmm. Why is that? Because we need to get it done. We don't want to come back to it when we get back from vacation, so we get it all knocked out. Yeah. So why don't we do that every day? Why don't we go into work every day like we're going on vacation tomorrow? Mm-hmm. Like, I go on vacation tomorrow if I get this stuff done. If we do that, all of a sudden our block time, we get everything knocked out in that block time. We come home knowing good and well that everything is done at work, so we can leave it at work. We don't have to think about it. We focus in on the time, because that's the thing. Like we touched back before, it's not lack of time, it's lack of priorities. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, you get what you want. So if you want stuff done at work, you get it knocked out. And that's the best way to do it, is just create short amount of times. If you want to get an 8-hour day done, get it all done by noon. Make a game for yourself. But again, to your point, going back to the auditing time, you have time. But look at the time that you're spending at the water cooler, going to grab coffee. We all do that because at the end of the day, coffee, when we're feeling bad, we got some couple rejections. Yeah, we go back in like, hey, I need to go get some coffee and rethink the day.
Right.
How often do you spend it at lunch? Or how long do you spend at lunch? Are you with a customer during lunch? Or, hey, if one of those grab and go, I push and heavily recommend, obviously, eating healthy. So don't grab a bag of chips and then run to the next appointment. But find out where you can kind of cut times, because that's the key. If you want, and everyone, this is something that I hate, but like, they don't want to restrict their lives to a calendar. They don't want to restrict their lives to a planner because it restricts. No, you'll find that if you put everything on your calendar, put everything on your to-do lists, you find you have a lot more time than you ever thought possible. So there's no longer that where did the day go, because you own the day. Now you created time for the rest of the things that you want. Now those other goals, other plans, other dreams, hey, maybe I can squeeze that in, as opposed to, wow, I need to take my wife out. I mean, let's squeeze her in next Thursday.
Right.
No, I can do whatever I want to because I own my day. So.
Yep. And to go into our next episode for next week, it's actually, this is valuable, because if you complete those time slots and you complete your day, you get this sense of positive attitude.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about attitude on our next episode. So I appreciate everyone's time as always, and you all have a great day.
Till next week.